Hi everyone. So this video is a recap of what we did in class on Monday. It's a shortened version of what we did on Monday. Remember that this course requires us to be in class on Monday. We meet in person on Mondays. I know some of you might be having trouble getting there, so I'm making this video to kind of supplement that. And I know some of you have vaccination issues and things like that. But I can't do the entire 2 hours that we did. We did a lot of stuff in class on Monday over 2 hours, and I'm not going to be able to recreate that entire thing here. I just want to give you a few things that we did and a few of the highlights of what we did in class to make sure you're aware of all that. But you want to make sure to try and get to class because that's where, again, all that information is going to be. So one of the main things we talked about on Monday was the idea of what a thesis is. And a thesis is really the big idea that you want to be proving in your essay, in your piece of writing. Anything that you're going to be writing is going to have some kind of a thesis. There's something that you need to be proving to people. If you're not doing that, if there's not something that needs to be, some new idea that you're going to need to potentially provide some evidence for, then there's not necessarily a reason for you to be writing. Even when we're going to be writing things talking about our own lives, you're going to talk about a certain space that you're in. You had to write about, excuse me, you had to write about your room, or some other kind of a room that you're familiar with, and kind of the thesis is is your emotional reaction to that room. What is the big idea there is how you feel about that room, and then you're providing details in order to be able to support that. And so keep that in mind that a thesis is not just the main idea, it is this idea that needs to be proved, because that's what you're ultimately doing, is you're proving some point. Okay, you're providing some evidence to support that, and that's all that an essay is. It is going to be a thesis with all the evidence that supports that thesis, and just keep that in mind for all the writing that we're going to be doing over the course of this semester. So we have, the kind of standard kind of theses we might have here say things like, excuse me again, baseball players who use steroids should not be eligible for the Hall of Fame, right? And so you feel that that's the case, you're going to have some evidence that's going to be able to support that. So you've got some reasons behind that, right? Because using steroids give athletes an unfair advantage. But even that's not an essay. You can't just say, because sometimes students say, well, I'm just being repetitive. I told you what I said, that baseball players who use steroids should not be eligible for the Hall of Fame because it gives them an unfair advantage. Well, I'm done. Well, but you're not really done. I mean, what you would do for the rest of the essay in order to support the thesis, in order to provide evidence, goes into talking about proving what those unfair advantages are. And so really providing examples. One of the things that we won't talk about in detail here in this video, but that we talked about in class a great deal, is the way in which Alexandra Horowitz in On Looking uses a lot of details to support a thesis. Realize that when she is providing a lot of details of things that she's going to be seeing when she's walking around, they're not just, I just put a bunch of details in there because I was trying to fill up space. That's not the case. What she's doing is she's supporting a thesis. There's a bigger idea, and all of those examples help support that. And so that's what we usually want to potentially be doing here, right? As I say up here, you want to find evidence to support that. Now, your reasons. Now, again, for the kinds of things we might be doing here at the beginning, we're going to be thinking about the evidence that we're going to provide here is going to be something like descriptions, right? How is it that you feel about a particular place? Well, let me describe that place so that you can begin to understand that. So just keep that in mind. You've got to have a thesis. You've got to have a clear thesis at the beginning, which is the big idea, and the big idea that's going to require some kind of evidence to be able to support that. And then the rest of your essay is going to be that evidence. One of the examples I used when I was in class had to do with, we recognize courtroom dramas. If you were accused of a crime, you had a lawyer, your lawyer has a thesis, right? The thesis that your lawyer has is, my client is innocent, right? But if that lawyer stood up in the courtroom and said, my client is innocent, I rest my case, you'd say, wait a minute, you're not a very good lawyer, right? Because the lawyer is supposed to present evidence to be able to support that thesis. Okay, that's what's going to convince people. I gave another example. Similarly, if we're in a work situation, we want to talk about where should we open our next store, over here or over there, right? Well, there are advantages to over here. I think we should open over here. Here are the advantages to opening over here, right? The rent is cheaper. We've got good traffic flow, things like that. What are the advantages to opening it somewhere else? Well, this is an up and coming neighborhood, right? It doesn't seem like much now, but there's some building going on in the neighborhood, and I think that eventually things are going to be a lot better. So we have a thesis where we should open the store, and then we can provide evidence for that as well. So this is not something that only exists in English essays. It has these larger applications that we want to be thinking about. And then we talked about topic sentences. And so a topic sentence is the main idea that we have in a paragraph. So a thesis tells us what we're going to be arguing for, what we want to be proving throughout our entire essay. The topic sentences tell us what we're supposed to be proving inside of our paragraphs. Now, one of the things that this implies is that our paragraphs are just smaller sections that are going to be supporting that thesis, right? We've got a big idea in our thesis, and then we break that big idea down into smaller sections, which are going to be our paragraphs. And we do that because that helps us organize our ideas. You can't talk about all of your ideas in one big lump. You can't just say, "Look, here's all my evidence. I'm just going to throw it in a pile." I mean, if your lawyer did that, my client's innocent, and just here, I'll put some files on the desk here. Here's some files. Here's some pictures. You sort through it. No. Wait. What your lawyer's supposed to do is say, look, let me tell you, look, here are some documents that show that my client was actually not near the crime scene. Here are some pictures that show my client not near the crime scene, right? Here are some witness statements that show that it seemed like the person who committed the crime didn't even look like my client. I mean, and they organize that into different things, right? Those are each a different bit of evidence, and we say, here's one kind of evidence, let me explain it to you. Here's another kind of evidence, let me explain that to you. We organize that because that helps the reader process the information. If it all comes in one big lump, they aren't going to be able to process that. So you've got to have a clear topic sentence. You've got to say that there is a particular idea that we're going to be discussing, and then be able to follow through to that point. So we've example topic sentence here. It says dialysis is harsh, expensive, and worst of all, only temporary. Dialysis is what we have when somebody's kidneys aren't functioning. And this goes through and explains why it is harsh, expensive, and worst of all, only temporary. It doesn't work very well. Treatments last 3 or 4 hours several times a week. Those dependent on dialysis are in a sense shackled to a machine for the rest of their lives, adding to excessive stress in the body. Dialysis causes patients to feel increasingly faint and tired, usually keeping them from work and other normal activities. All this is evidence of that. We could have just said dialysis is bad, but we're providing evidence of why dialysis is bad. Okay, and when we're done telling you about all the reasons why dialysis is bad, we're going to move on to the next paragraph. And so think very carefully about where your paragraphs are, why you're moving from one paragraph to the other. Okay, and again, usually your topic sentence is going to be at the beginning. I'm going to post this in the I'll post this document so you can read the rest. I won't go through as much with that. With this next one, this talks about putting a topic sentence at the end because it can potentially go at the end, and so you can read potentially how that might work. But down here, we're going to talk about using topic sentences in a narrative, right? Which is kind of what we're going to be talking about. You're going to be talking about potentially your personal experiences, but even those have topic sentences. There is a particular way in which we are going to organize things that happen in our lives, right? So if you want to talk about a neighborhood that you like or dislike, you might talk about, here's one thing I like about the neighborhood, right? I like the fact that all the neighbors are friendly to each other. And then we have a paragraph telling us about that, right? When we're done talking about that, we can say another thing I like about the neighborhood is the fact that a lot of people have gardens and it makes the neighborhood look pretty. I've got a paragraph that does that. And so we divide all that up, right? And that's, again, that's going to make it easier for us to understand what's going to happen there. And you want to make sure, and again, I'll ask you, you can go through and review this on your own. In this paragraph, we can see that we might have problems sticking to the main point, right? Because that's what we're going to have, is remembering to stick to a particular point. So this says, in Se habla español, Tanya Maria Barrientos notes some of the difficulties she encounters as a Latina who's not fluent in Spanish. Previous generations of immigrants were encouraged to speak only English. You're like, wait. This is about her, right? Some of the difficulties she encountered. Previous generations of immigrants, that's not her, right? You can see it kind of related. That's why we might have put it there, but it doesn't really relate because it's not about her. So we'll just cross that out. And we continue on with the paragraph. When someone poses a question to her, see, we're talking about her, in Spanish, she often has to respond in English. In other instances, she tries to speak Spanish but falters over the past and future tenses. So again, we're still talking about the problems that she has. Situations like these embarrass Barrientos and make her feel left out of the community she wants to be a part of. So we're still talking about her. Next, native Guatemalans who are bilingual do not have such problems. We're like, well, wait a minute. I can see the connection between that, right? But realize, if this paragraph, it said that our topic sentence is about the difficulties that she encounters, then I've got these two sentences that don't talk about her, and so they're not really sticking to the topic, okay? And be really aware of that, because that is one of the biggest problems I think that we oftentimes have, is we set up an idea about what we want to talk about in a paragraph, and it's easy to move off in a slightly different direction. Because again, it's not like these two ideas are not related, but they are not part of this same topic sentence, right? This is a topic sentence about her. It is not about previous generations, and it's not about native Guatemalans generally. I can see that it's about bilingual issues, but let's put that in a different paragraph, right? We can say, look, let's talk about the experiences that she specifically had. Then in a new paragraph, we can say those experiences are experiences that many immigrants throughout American history have faced. And then maybe these two sentences might make some sense there. Okay, and so see the difference between those two. You want to make sure that you are sticking to the topic sentence that you have set up. A lot of times, what I do with students is, when we get into conferences, I'll say, "What's your topic sentence?" And they can tell me very clearly what the topic sentence is, and then I'll say, how does this sentence relate to your topic sentence? And they're like, oh, I guess it doesn't, right? And so it's just a matter of starting to recognize that, to figure out that you've got a topic sentence. All you have to do is stick to it. You set up a rule for yourself about what's going to go here, and then you need to remember to stick to that, to remember to obey that rule. So that's generally what we said about thesis and topic sentences. Again, you can review the entirety of this entire document in the Blackboard folder, and then in the next video, I'm going to talk about your first big writing assignment.